Hi, I'm Tom, creator of Moonstone, the wonderfully whimsical fantasy skirmish game. I'm going to be doing some videos over the next couple of months. We've got a Moonstone Players Facebook group where I'm kind of saying I'm going to be doing videos. If anyone's got any questions, it's kind of an Ask Me Anything kind of thing. If you're not already a member of that group, I highly recommend joining up. It's where you typically get all the newest information and any kind of like things that are being play tested or first previews of sculpts, all that kind of stuff. So the theme for this video is two of the Wave 1 shooters, which is Flintlock, I don't know if you can see him, and McBoom. So McBoom's our kind of crazy leprechaun, catch me if you can kind of character. Flintlock's obviously a classic sniper soldier. Why am I talking about those today? It's because some of the players that have just started getting into the game are wondering how to make the most of them. They're either finding that they're too difficult to hit or not doing enough damage. So they are both very, very useful characters, I would say. But one thing is they are kind of specific. They're useful in specific circumstances only. You wouldn't necessarily take either of them as auto includes, but they can be very, very useful in certain situations, and I'll explain why. One general piece of advice on using arcane attacks is they won't necessarily kill, and that's by design. Unless the opponent's already weakened, you're unlikely to be able to one-shot someone. Again, there are ways, I'll tell you about them later on in this video. But the general idea is to weaken people. In Moonstone, you have energy pips on your health track, where when you suffer wounds, you generate less energy. Energy is action points. So it can be very, very effective to use these guys very late in the turn as your last activation, effectively as energy denial. If you can knock somebody down by 3 or 4 wounds, enough that they lose some of their energy pips. I mean, fairies have got energy on practically every pip. So if you do 3 wounds to them, you've denied them 3 energy for the following turn. You do it right at the end of the turn so that the opponent doesn't have a chance to heal them. And that's generally how they're used most of the time. You soften someone up, and then a melee character can go in next turn and finish them off. And in the meantime, you've significantly reduced their effectiveness the following turn. So I'll go into specifics next on how to use each of them. So Flintlock, I love Flintlock. He was an absolute monster in our early playtesting. He was really probably the most powerful character in the game. He has been nerfed a couple of times to kind of make him not so overpowered. So if you're using him and you're using him against goblins and you just got humans versus goblins and there's no big guys on and you're thinking he's useless, I can't hit anything, this is not where he is at his strongest, to be honest. So in overview, he's the original long-ranged attacker. He's got a very impressive threat range with his 4-inch move, and his 12-inch shot means he's got effectively a 16-inch threat range, which is, about as long as you get in this game. He's great, but as I say, weakening enemy characters for the melee characters to come in and sweep up. So on offense, his main feature, as you probably would be able to tell just by looking at the miniature, is his shoot musket. If you want to shoot it and then reload it so that you can shoot again next turn, it's going to use up all of his energy. And that's what he does most of the time. The damage is X plus 2, so whatever the number on the arcane card plus 2, which means even if you just declare a 1, you're still going to do 3 damage. So you can get quite a lot of damage at quite long range. So against fairies and goblins, he's going to struggle. He's only got arcane of 3, and you're looking for a green card. With those 3 cards, you've got a very good chance of getting a green, and if not, you can probably bluff it, because chances are massively in your favour. When you go down to 2 cards, it's much more risky, and if you go down to 1, you know, I just wouldn't shoot at someone with an arcane stat of 1. You can't bluff because people will automatically say that you're bluffing because you've got no follow-up cards to attack with a second time, so it's impossible to bluff. It's just a case of do you flip the card you need or not, and it's too risky. I usually wouldn't do it. If all I could do was take a shot with an arcane stat of 1, I'd use him to harvest instead. So go and pick up Moonstones is what I mean by that. He's not terrible in melee. He can be quite good turn 4 when people have already suffered some wounds. He can run in and stab them with his dagger. He's not awful. He's not brilliant, but if you do, if his gun stops working because you get caught out bluffing and it explodes, don't worry. You've got another melee attacker. He's not too terrible. So resilience-wise, he's pretty standard for a human. 8 wounds, which is, yeah, about human average. No real defensive tech, other than the fact that he'll generally hang right at the back of your formation, and you know, he can outrange pretty much anyone, apart from a lot of the gnomes. So that's kind of why he survives as long as he usually does. He is a great harvester. He's a really good option to pick up moonstones with. Because of his long range, he can, you know, he's not going to be chasing after people all that often. It's well worth foregoing a turn of shooting at one point to pick up some moonstones with him. You win the game, at least with the standard scenario, by holding the most moonstones. So, yeah, it's not necessarily worth just injuring someone a little bit more if you're giving up the opportunity to pick up a stone with him. Support and control. So his main use as a support character is in picking off enemy healers. If you can take them out early, or just injure them enough that they have to spend their heal on themselves instead of the rest of their guys, then that's quite, you know, useful support. The other thing that he can do support-wise is often overlooked, which is his lookout ability. You rarely use it because if you kind of use it on a standard turn, you're giving up your reload. You don't usually want to do that. However, on turn 4, if you are winning and you're carrying the most moonstones, sometimes it can be more valuable making one of your stone carriers evade -2 or even -3, because you can use lookout multiple times. You can use it all 3 times with all 3 of his energy if you want. So that can be something to bear in mind. You won't use it every game, but it's worth remembering. So last thing I want to talk about with Flintlock is tips, tricks and troop builds. This is probably the most interesting section. So I've mentioned it a couple of times, if you're using the drafting rules, so you're selecting characters in alternating fashion, you'll probably want to pay attention to the evade stats of the characters your opponent is choosing. If you're facing off against a fairy side that's got everyone -2, don't bother bringing him. If you're facing against some humans and they've got Fritz and Freya Flavius and Gotchka, then you're going to have loads of juicy targets that you can shoot at. So bear that in mind. If you're not using the drafting rules and you're just kind of like choosing troops, I would hesitate to bring him against goblins unless you use one of the tricks I'm about to tell you, and I probably wouldn't bring him against fairies. So if you do bring him, he's really great with Quack. Quack's got a ability called Foresight, which gives +2 Arcane. Taking Flintlock from Arcane 3 to Arcane 5 is massive. You can now hit those pesky goblins pretty reliably. Well, very reliably. And you can even hit fairies. The second character that's super useful to take with Flintlock is Eric. Everyone will automatically use Eric's My Hero on Fancy Hat, which is a really strong move. and overlook the fact that he can also donate energy to soldiers. It's only 1 energy when donated to soldiers, but that's all you need to allow Flintlock to fire, reload, and then fire again. So he can fire twice in 1 turn. With Quack's Arcane 5 and firing twice, he's got very, very good chance of killing a 6 health or 7 health character, like Beaky Bobby. If Beaky Bobby's out in the open and you can polish him off on turn 1, that's absolutely brilliant for a human player against goblins. The other thing that I like to do with Flintlock is a gnome gun line. So this is Graddock, Mama Gimbal, Quarrel, and then maybe Morris, and then maybe Billy, because this is a very static build, so you kind of need someone to run around and pick up the stones whilst the rest of them clump together. With this build, you've got 4 shooters that have all got threat ranges of around 16, which is extremely good. And you've also got basically a trick with Mama Gimbal, casting Mother's Wrath to allow Quarrel to fire twice. Mama Gimbal boosts all of those 3 gnomes with +1 arcane, making them a lot easier for them to hit. Graddock and Quarrel can use Brothers in Arms on one another to give one another +1 arcane. You'll probably have to either do that on the turn that Mama Gimbal uses Mother's Wrath or forego a reload, but you can get up to Arcane 5 with Quarrel. You can fire twice with Quarrel. You can fire all 4-ish of, you might be able to do 5 shots 1 turn. If you slam all of those into 1 target, they're going to go down. As I say, it's very, very static build. You'll struggle to pick up moonstones with it, but it can be good fun. And Flintlock fits in quite nicely into that until there is another gnome shooter. There will be one coming, but for the time being, Flintlock misses out on all of those gnome synergies. Apart from one very important one, which is Graddock's Smell a Lie. This is absolutely brilliant. When you've got 3 or 4 models all doing ranged attacks, and you can't be caught out for bluffing. So let's say Flintlock is looking for green cards and he plays a green 1, which does 3 damage. Why not say it's a green 3? Your opponent might let you through, in which case you've done 2 extra damage. If your opponent calls your bluff, they can't replace your card with one of theirs, so your green 1 still stands and he still does 3 damage. So Graddock's Smell a Lie in that gun line is brilliant, and it makes Flintlock really reliable, because you can now shoot when you've only got 2 arcane cards, because they can't call out your bluff and inflict catastrophes on you anymore. It's really strong, it's really good fun, it's quite different, it's not overpowered, but it's worth giving a try at some point. So the next we got talk about McBoom. So if I go back through overview, so he's a support character primarily. He's not going to do huge amounts of damage on his own. So here, if we talk about his offense, so the main thing he's got is his blunderbuss, and the point of the blunderbuss is it's really easy to hit with. It doesn't do a huge amount of damage, it's just X. So it's absolutely pointless shooting at heavily armoured targets like, Fancy Hat or Gotchgut. It's just going to bounce off their armour and do nothing. But he's very, very good at taking out fairies. With Arcane Stat 4, go down to 2 against most fairies, but he can use green cards or blue cards. So even with only 2 cards, he's still got a very good chance of hitting. And if you, let's say, do 2 damage on a fairy, that's a third of their health. And he can shoot his blunderbuss twice. He can do blunderbuss, reload, blunderbuss. He can't do it twice every turn, but he can certainly do it twice, when he first gets into somebody's face. So he can reliably plink 2 damage, and he can do it twice. So he can reliably do 4 damage. That's, most fairies only start with 6 damage. that's quite scary. So yeah, he's good against soft targets basically, and targets that are otherwise hard to hit and rely on evade stat. The other thing about him is he can sucker punch himself. It's normally better to do it on another friendly model, but if you want, you can cast Sucker Punch on yourself and then run in and try and punch someone. Sometimes maybe late in the game that'll be your best bet. So resilience wise, the most interesting thing about him from a resilience perspective is his evade stat 2. He's the only goblin with evade stat 2. It kind of represents him kind of, you know, being this really jumpy, skittish character that's kind of popping up here and there and like really crazy. He's kind of like leprechaun-y style. That makes him really good if you are facing against the aforementioned gnome gun line or something like that. He's also got the Now You See Me as his signature move. Melee stat of 3, he's basically got a 50% chance of getting this when he's being attacked. You can place him within 6 inches, you can get him out of trouble. He makes quite a nice Moonstone carrier for that reason, because he's got his 4 energy and no weakling or anything like that, so he can basically pick up any stone he comes into contact with. He's very hard to shoot if he's got a stone, and if somebody engages him in melee, he's got a 50-50 chance of just skipping 6 inches straight away. So he's a really great Moonstone carrier. Support and control, the best thing about him is his Sucker Punch. So it gives target goblin's next melee attack is +2 damage. If you combine this with the event card, the agenda card raiding party, which makes each of your character's first melee attack +2, it means you can go in with a melee attack that's at +4. That's pretty tasty. Put that on a character with quite high arcane. I mean, I was actually going to say that a brilliant idea would be to put it with the fencer, but I've just noticed it does say target goblin, so you can't do that. But put it on a character with quite high melee stat, or a signature move that does damage against almost every defensive move, and it can be really good. What else do we want to say about him? Yeah, tips, tricks, and troop builds. As I say, he's good if you're planning on doing a lot of melee attacks. His You'll Never Get Me Na 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 is great for sucking people in, support characters, for your melee troops to finish off. So if you've got plenty of melee characters, he's good. He's also good if you're facing off against fairies. Other than that, there's no particularly deadly combos that are springing to mind. But yeah, he's pretty handy. Once the fairies come out, you'll start to see him being picked a lot more often. So I just wanted to also answer a rules question on these two, and that was if both of them have the reload ability. So when they fire their weapon, they can't fire it again until they've spent 2 energy to reload. And the question was asked by Daniel Humphrey on the Facebook group. Does that mean if you fire and your opponent calls a bluff and you get the option to go again with the cards in your hand, can you? Because he hasn't reloaded. And the answer is yes. The reload ability, so it's all contained within one action. Basically, imagine Flintlock fires and the bullet ricochets off and hits someone else, or he just fires and gets extra damage in because it's a particularly powerful shot if you fire it at the same target. McBoom, you can imagine, there's a spread on his gun. So if you want to imagine why you've managed to hit 2 different targets with either of those characters, there's a fluff-based reason. But essentially it follows all the same rules as every other arcane attack, if it was a magical attack. It's all the kind of like the 3 second go on arcane when you are incorrectly called for a bluff is all part of the same action. So basically that's the answer to that. Yes, you can fire effectively fire twice without needing to reload if you get called a bluff, and you just have to imagine that it's a ricochet or something if you want to choose 2 different targets. So, other things that was asked for was to show some of the fairy miniatures. Just getting them out of my box, very professional. So, here we go. So, a lot of people haven't seen these yet. Wave 2 is shipping at the moment. A lot of people are curious what the fairies look like, so I've got them to show off. I did actually drop these on the floor the other day, which is a shame, so there's a few very slight breakages, but you can kind of see that's Butterfingers. They're on these really nice scenic bases, because the miniatures, the fairies themselves are pretty tiny, but the bases make them basically just as big as any other character. So here's the Fencer. A lot of people have been saying that she's hard to assemble. She is quite tricky to assemble, but I think she's worth it once you do it, because she looks pretty awesome hanging off that tree like that, swooping down. Then we've got Freya, who's got her kind of like magical whirlwind going on, and her horns. Looks pretty good. We've got Silver Tongue. Don't know if it's the best camera, but you can kind of make him out. Looks nice. Then we've got Wasp, who is probably one of the easier ones to assemble. Looks pretty good. And we've got Tito, who I absolutely love. She's one of my favourites. Really graceful. So yeah, you'll all be getting those in the flesh if you're a Kickstarter backer pretty soon. As I say, they're going out this week, so you'll all get them within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'd have thought. Other things I wanted to talk about is we are going to be launching our own pundit scheme or henchman scheme, or we're going to be calling it the Goblin Scheme. Goblin Schemes, haha. So there'll be some sort of groats that we'll give out for people that put on demo games at their local store or club. We'll give out more generous piles of groats for people that organise tournaments, and those groats will be redeemable in kind of like some sort of internal store. More details to follow on that, but if you're interested, drop me a message on Facebook. Other things I want to talk about is we are running our first Moonstone Tournament. That's at Firestorm Games in Cardiff, and that is on the 29th of July. So tickets just went up about 2 days ago. I'll include a link down there in the comments where you can get tickets. It's £10. You'll get at least 3 games. There will be prizes for winner and best painted, and also every participant will get a as yet unreleased gnome, which is called Joanna. She's a kind of like a Viking princess with like a forest friend theme. She's like best friends with a squirrel and stuff. So yeah, everyone who attends will get her in resin and a stat card. So yeah, it should be good. I think that's all I've got to say today. As I say, I've run up to 23 minutes now, which is a lot longer than I thought this video was going to be. I'll do another one maybe in about 4 weeks' time. So if you've got anything you want to ask about, jump onto the Moonstone Players group on Facebook and ask a question, and I'll store them all up and answer them next time. Cool. Thanks very much.